Welcome to the Content Amplified podcast, brought to you by Masset. Our goal is to help you get more from your marketing content. Each episode is a 10 to 15 minute interview with industry experts that share amazing insights to help you squeeze as much juice from your content as you possibly can. Here's today's interview.
Welcome back to another episode of Content Amplified. Today, I'm joined by Austin. Austin, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You bet. Well, before we dive into the subject, maybe if you could give us a quick background about who you are, what you do, how you got into marketing. I think that's super relevant to the conversation and really what you're doing and what you love in marketing. I think that'd be super helpful.
So I've been in the marketing, specifically really influencer marketing space for a little over 12 years now. I started making YouTube videos in college, and then coming out of that, I was looking for work. I was like working construction, all types of random stuff, and just couldn't figure out a great job. And then actually ended up turning my YouTube channel, a little bit of success, into a job at a YouTube multi-channel network called Fullscreen back in the day. So I ended up running social for them for a little over a year, and then was actually still building my YouTube presence. So quit and became a full-time YouTuber for like 5 years, managed myself, brokered my own deals, hired people for shoots, ran a whole company really. And then back in 2017, I was like, yeah, I think I'm ready to maybe like move out of this kind of live your life in front of a bunch of people vibe and go more to the marketing side of things. So took that experience, and since 2017 I've been really primarily in the ad agency space, doing influencer marketing for multitude of different brands. Also had a short stint at ByteDance, the parent company of TikTok, where I was building out and working on another platform for them, but primarily in the advertising agency space, and that's where I'm at now.
So the subject for today that we're going to talk about is something that is really just kind of barely starting to hit the market. And I think it's one of those few opportunities to really get ahead and do some unique marketing efforts, but really influencer marketing and B2B. Influencer stuff has been around in B2C for a little while, but it's just starting to pop up in B2B. I start to see sponsored posts on LinkedIn and things like that. I've seen some really good partnerships with influencers. More than ever, people on LinkedIn and other platforms are trying to be influencers and things of that nature. Where is this coming from? How do we catch the wave? What are your thoughts in general about how to use influencer marketing in B2B? And how is this going to change things? Like, what are your thoughts on this in general?
I think it's really exciting. This was a while ago. This was probably 2.5 years ago. I actually interviewed at LinkedIn to be part of their creator partnerships team that they were building then. Obviously didn't get the role, but like was able to connect with a lot of people there. So I've been able to stay in touch, and it's awesome what they're doing. And it's so early. I think like you said, influence marketing in the B2C space has been around for a long time. Even that though is actually like, one thing I like to throw out to people is global advertising spend is about $1 trillion. Global influencer marketing spend is like 30 billion. So even in that space, we're like, ooh, influencer marketing, cool. And it's like, okay, well, we're getting 3% of the budget. So like, honestly, it's still very early, even in the B2C space in terms of budgets and how we're allocating things. And then when you look at the B2B space, very ground floor. And I think LinkedIn is honestly the main catalyst, right? Because they're just the biggest B2B player, I would say, in this kind of like social connection space. But I think what's really interesting about it is traditionally when we think about influencers, it's like, oh, you have 1 million followers. Cool. That's awesome. On LinkedIn, if you have 3,000 followers, that's maybe equivalent of like 100,000 in terms of impact. Because if all those 3,000 followers are maybe your software engineer, and all of your followers are in software engineering, but then a software engineer company wants you to talk about something in a product or whatever, that is so much more impactful than just the kind of more traditional awareness play of like, yeah, hopefully some people see it and will think, I want to go buy chicken wings or whatever it is, So it's really exciting to kind of see how LinkedIn is truly investing into the space. And then, how, like you said, you're starting to see brand deals, you're starting to see, I think the other thing too will be as the product of LinkedIn catches up to content creation, I think that's going to be a whole different level as well.
That's a good point. So if you're a B2B brand and you're looking at, this next year, the next 6 months, whatever it may be, and you're wondering, how do I experiment? This is a channel. I may not know how to approach it. What would be your first few steps? I've seen some content where it's like, hey, it's not about the sponsored post. It's about the relationship and this and that. But how do you kind of dip your toes in the water and start to see if it's a good fit for your brand?
Maybe one advantage in the B2B influencer marketing space, specifically on LinkedIn, could be instead of flat fees, maybe you can do a true conversion, like however many users sign up to something, you get X amount of dollars, whatever type of model you want to figure out. I think more people on LinkedIn might be open to that because of the newsletters they may be running. Well, like I said, that more like specific follower presence and community that exists on LinkedIn. And so that's probably a good way to dip your toes in, is maybe go for that more performance-based model instead of that more flat fee kind of traditional influencer space model. So I would say that's probably a good way to start stepping in. The other thing though too is just to figure out, with any influencer marketing, it's important to just figure out, how do you truly empower the person that you're wanting to work with? So if they're already making content about software engineering, I don't know, there's so many different things we could probably talk about, but like maybe software engineers are making content about tips and tricks for it. If you're giving them something that's allowing them to make more content or to take their content to the next level, that's really valuable. So finding ways to truly partner and not just do one-off things, I think is going to be a lot easier to do with B2B marketing, because those products are so specifically aligned to that person. Like if I'm promoting a more broad product on B2C marketing, chances are a lot of those people that see it on my big audience may not have any need for it, right? So I'm looking at like a 1 to 3% conversion rate thing. Whereas with LinkedIn and these types of products that you may be talking about, it could be 50% pretty easily.
I love it. You talked about, the almost the conversion ratio, right? If you've got 3,000 LinkedIn followers, it's, almost the equivalent on a different platform of many more, hundreds of thousands or something like that. So when you're looking at finding ideal partnerships, what are some of the things that you should look for in the ideal kind of an influencer for your brand? What are some of the ranges maybe of followers? What should be good indicators that maybe someone like that would be a good fit and someone worth reaching out to and seeing if you could work with them directly?
I just think B2B, the place to be is LinkedIn, just because it's so much more targeted. We're actually running a campaign for a client right now where we're looking at YouTube and LinkedIn. They work in like tech products, but the very specific, oh, you need a transistor or you need a whatever because you're building something. So we're kind of taking a two-pronged approach of like, okay, let's go to YouTubers who are just makers that make things. Some of that though is going to be a little bit entertainment based because I may have no idea how to do that, but I'm like, this is cool. So we're doing that to kind of get the awareness play. And then we're going the LinkedIn route to do the conversion play of like, okay, you made a really entertaining piece of content on YouTube and it's still going to reach the right audience by and large. But then now we're going to go over to LinkedIn and do very specific, way more technical talk to those people that actually follow for that kind of thing. So I think there's just different ways to look at it. The other thing I would say too, though, is just in general, thinking about content. I'm always like, especially on LinkedIn, there's a lot of just writing, and I think that's cool. And I kind of alluded to this earlier. If you think about like, what is LinkedIn going to be like when you can make content like TikTok, but it's on LinkedIn and it's for that audience? That's how I like to think, because I think that's eventually where it will go. Because as just consumers in general, we're used to just consuming pretty awesome social content. And so from a B2B angle, I think that's where they're eventually going to go. And so people are already getting creative with how they make content on places like LinkedIn. So if I'm looking around, I'm going to go, okay, cool. This software engineer, I keep using this thing. I know nothing about software engineering, by the way. So I hope I'm not offending anyone that may be listening. They're like, yeah, this dude. But there may be someone that just writes a few cool stories, or there may be someone that's making video or doing weekly, the live audio things that you can do on LinkedIn. So I'd go after those people because they're obviously thinking more creatively about content, but obviously still experts in their field because that's just kind of the way it is on there.
So when you're working with someone, there's, in B2B especially, there's always a matter of measurement, right? How do I measure the impact of working with someone or something? What are some pieces of advice or just information in general that you can share with people on the proper way to measure impact? Because not everything can be at the bottom of the funnel. Some of it can, but how do you typically approach that as you work with businesses and influencers in general?
It's interesting because broadly speaking, even outside of like B2B, like a lot of brands will be like, well, how do you measure influencer marketing? And it's like, there's technology, like social platforms are way more advanced than like a Nielsen rating, I would personally say. There's a lot of different things that the social platforms are offering to where you can measure obviously awareness and different types of engagement rates. Like I think those are all really valuable. Ultimately, though, if you're a brand trying to market, you need to be doing your part of like, okay, do you have an app? Do you have a website? Do you have people that can create codes? Don't just come ask, oh, yeah, find us an influencer and we'll work with them. It's like, okay, yeah, we would love to do that. What can you offer us? Because we don't run your back end, we don't run your apps or whatever it is. Like, let's figure out ways where we can have codes so we can track conversion rates. Let's figure out maybe there's specific sales that will happen. Maybe there's specific ways we can partner and have a software engineer have their own product and it's like a collaboration, right? So like all these different things, I think it's important for brands to kind of also come to the table. We have the technology a lot of times to measure that top of funnel stuff, but if we want to go deep, we're going to need to be truly collaborating with the brands on that. So that's one thing I like to always call out, because it's like a lot of times brands will be like, well, how do we really know? And it's like, I don't know. I don't have access to all your back end stuff. We need to collaborate on this. So that's usually where the conversation should start.
I love it. All right. Well, as promised, the time is coming close to an end. Any final pieces of advice for anyone who's saying, you know what? I need to try this. I need to dive in. I need to look at it. Any other words of wisdom for anyone looking into the space?
Yeah, I mean, I think B2B influencer marketing is still fairly new. And I personally think it's going to continue to cross over more into like how B2C influencer marketing works, just because 60% of the US population is about 50 and under. And those people are consuming social media more than any other media platform. And then even when they're consuming like linear TV and all that stuff, they're actively skipping those ads, using ad blockers, all that stuff. But when you're consuming social content, what are you consuming? It's pretty much creator centric content. It's going to continue to be true for B2B stuff. It's going to continue to be true for B2C. So, as we're thinking about what the future of this is, it needs to be influencer marketing. It needs to be creator centric marketing. That's going to come to life in different ways, right? Like whether it's just high level, like, oh, I'm promoting Target, or more specific, like I'm promoting a very specific tech product. Thinking about the way people consume content, I think, is what's most important. And so even within B2B, whether that's podcasts or newsletters or whatever it is, we have to get creative in how we evolve that and get those messages out there.
I love it. Well, Austin, thank you so much for the advice and information. It's super valuable. It's definitely something worth looking into. If anyone wants to reach out, continue the conversation, if they need help in this space, how can they connect with you online?
Yeah, just look me up on LinkedIn. Austin Knoll is my name. I'm a strategy director of influencer marketing at McKinney. So I literally am on LinkedIn connecting with people all the time. I love just, I'm really big on just connecting community, and yeah, hit me up.
Love it. Appreciate it. Thanks again for the time, Austin.
Yep, thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Content Amplified podcast. Please subscribe and leave us a review. And for additional ways to get more out of your content, visit our website at getmasset.com. That's getmasset.com. And tune in next time to the Content Amplified podcast.